All right, guys, moving on to Argento's 1982 classic Tenebrae, which is his return to the Giallo genre, which I think is interesting. His whole progression from his first film with Bird with Crystal Plumage, and then Cat o' Nine Tails, Four Flies on Grey Velvet, being in that whole Giallo format, which I did not forget about Four Flies. I had to skip it when I was going through all his early films because I couldn't find it anywhere streaming online. Then I ended up finding it after I passed it and ended up going on to Deep Red. So I did not forget about it. I know I got to circle back to Four Flies on Grey Velvet, which is a film of his that I haven't seen as much as his other ones, and I haven't seen this film in a very long time. So I'm very interested in going back and seeing how my memory and thoughts hold up on that film for sure. But just his whole, like I said, the progression of his career from his Animal trilogy, starting off in just pure Giallo fashion, then moving on to Suspiria and Inferno with the more supernatural elements, and just the overwhelmingly beautiful use of color and just the style to them, and then returning to Giallo with this film. And then moving on to Phenomena, going back to a more fantasy, supernatural ish premise for that movie, and then back to Giallo with opera. Like, just a very interesting progression. And I think a lot of the reason of him returning to Giallo for this is how poorly received Inferno was. Like I said in the last video for Inferno, that I think a lot of people, especially those who got into Argento and just heard about him because of Suspiria, and then went on to see Inferno after that, weren't too big on that movie. And I said it's not a film of his that you see ranked highly among his other films, despite I love Inferno. I think Deep Red, Suspiria, and Inferno and this movie is like the greatest four films released consecutively, one after another, by a director. Like, for sure. I mean, damn, man. Deep Red, Suspiria, Inferno, and then Tenebrae. Like, I can't think of another four films by a director released one after the other that match up to this. I then throw in Phenomena and Opera. You got fucking six films in a row that are just excellent in every way. So I mean, what an accomplishment. I mean, in his first three films, don't get me wrong, I love, his Animal trilogy that he started his career with, but just from Deep Red on to Opera, what a fucking stretch of movies. Like, really amazing stuff. And we have Goblin returning for the score in this movie, which is, well, it's kind of Goblin. I know this is after Goblin disbanded, so this is like three-quarters of Goblin, but you might as well just call it Goblin because it sounds just like them. I think it's the keyboard player, the bassist, and I want to say the guitarist. I'm pretty sure, something like that. It's like three-quarters of the band. But like I said, it might as well just be billed as Goblin because it sounds just like their other work, but very different, like very 80s sound to it compared to Suspiria and Deep Red, like, which are a lot more 70s sound to it. Like, this score to this movie, which I adore the score to this movie, is a lot more, it's very synthesizer heavy, very keyboard heavy. It sounds almost disco-ish in a way. Like, it's kind of like really synthesizer heavy rock mixed with some disco sounds, which just fits the film very, very well. And I feel like this is Argento's most focused film. Like, just the way that the dialogue is handled and the acting in this movie, and then just the kills in this movie, man, are so good. This movie has my favorite kill in an Argento film, by far. And I'm sure a lot of people can guess what that is because I see it on a lot of people's lists of favorite kills in an Argento film. It is so beautifully shot. We'll get to that. But we have Peter Neal, who is a writer who's visiting Rome for a book like tour and stuff for his latest book, Tenebrae, which is obviously why this movie is called Tenebrae. And just the whole character of Neal, I love his performance in this movie. Like, he's just a very straight-laced guy. He's very professional. He comes off as just a very kind person, and is just someone who you would not expect to be a murderer. And I feel like the reveal of him being the killer at the end, well, the second killer, since there's two in this movie, but the whole reveal of him being the killer at the end, I feel it was very well handled. Like, the first time I saw this movie, I did not expect it. Did not expect him to be the killer. I had some suspicions, mostly because of like the flashback scenes we see with the woman with the red shoes, but for the most part, they put a lot of work into some good red herrings in this movie to make you think that it could be this person or it could be Jane, his ex-fiance, and just very well handled. And like, this is one of my favorite Giallo films of all time. Like, it's such a great movie. It's so, like I said, like very focused. It's not as out there as a lot of his other films. It's just, and it's filmed in a way that it feels like a crime procedural, almost like it's like. And there's gone is the lighting of Suspiria and Inferno with the colors everywhere. Like, there is a lot of usage of the color white in this movie. There's a lot of bright lighting. There's a lot of the sets and the locations that are filmed in this movie that are just bright white walls and just totally different style to it than the previous two films, which is another interesting choice for the direction that he went after Suspiria and Inferno. And we get the scene with the shoplifter girl in the bookstore stealing a book. And I guess apparently if you're a shoplifter, you can just offer to fuck the manager. And not only do you not get arrested, but you get to keep the book. Like, the scene with her in the manager's office, and I don't know how he has like her arrest records, because he starts saying like, you've been arrested for shopkeeping for shoplifting like a dozen times. So I don't know how he has that information, but apparently she's been doing this many, many times. And she just offers to him like, here's my address, and like, you can stop by later, and like, it's just a paperback novel and everything. And he's fine with this. He's like, writes her address down, and not only, like I said, does she get to just like fuck her way out of a charge, but she gets to keep the book. Like, when she's leaving, like, the manager like says, all right, I'll talk to you later, and he puts the book in her bag and she gets to leave with it. So there's a tip for any women out there. If you get caught shoplifting, just offer to fuck the manager and you get to keep a book. And then you just don't have to follow through with, seeing this guy ever again. Just give a fake address or something like that. It's a good little plan right there. Then we get her whole little kill, which is awesome. And like I said, just his return with Giallo in this, like, straight Giallo with the black gloved killer with the razor blade, and just straight up Giallo throughout this whole movie. And when she's getting the razor blade right against her neck, and then the killer's taking the books out of Tenebrae and shoving the pages out of Tenebrae and shoving it in her mouth, and then slits her throat with the razor blade. Really, really cool opening kill. Then we have the whole lesbian journalist Tilda, who has known Peter Neal for years and starts grilling him that his newest book, Tenebrae, is sexist against women. And a lot of critics at the time, after Suspiria, Inferno, Deep Red, were giving Argento shit for being a misogynist and for being sexist, and that in all of his films, the females are the helpless victims, and that he just gets off on killing females in his movies. And this was kind of his response to that. Like, there's a little bit of meta thrown into this movie, and that this movie being his response to those criticisms of him just being a misogynist, and that making females his victims and taking joy in filming kill scenes and deaths of all the female characters in his movies. Very cool stuff how this is like his response to all that. And then we have the great late John Saxon in this movie, who I absolutely love Saxon. Like, I can't think of a movie that this guy doesn't give such a great performance in. I mean, obviously Nightmare on Elm Street and other movies as his career went on, but like, for an earlier role of his in a horror movie, such a great performance. And he gives some funny lines throughout this. Like, the whole reoccurring gag with his hat is so funny. like when he's wearing like the like black fedora looking hat, and Peter Neal says to him like after he says, "What do you think of my hat?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's very nice, but like doesn't it drop off?" He's like, "What do you mean drop off?" He's like, "Well, if you make like a sudden movement," and then he just like shakes his head around like this. And his smile after that, man, is so great. Like, oh, I love John Saxon so much. And he's like, and then after he shakes his head around, it's still on his head, and Peter Neal's like, wow, that's extraordinary. And he said, like, yeah, drop off. It's not going to drop off. Such a great little reoccurring gag in this movie. Everything with Saxon in this movie is so good. Then we have the cops show up talking about the shoplifter's murder with Peter Neal, and that is based off of his book. And just the whole thing with the detectives in this movie. Like, I forget his name every time I watch this movie, something with a G. But I love the detective in this movie. He does such a great performance in this movie. And just like the fact that he's an avid reader. And just like the dialogue between him and Peter Neal when he's talking about reading all of Neal's previous books and him saying that, you know, I'm a detective, and yet when I read your books, and Peter Neal says, you never guess the killer. And he's like, no, never. Like, just a great exchange of dialogue there, and such a cool little idea of just like a nice little touch thrown in there that this is a detective and this is his job of solving crimes. But like when he reads Neal's books, he can never figure out who the killer is. And just that, how that plays into like the ending and him discovering that Neal is the killer is just very, very well done. Like, I really love that about this movie. And we have the killer's phone calls with the creepy Giallo voice, like the muted whisper that we hear in so many of these Giallo films. Like I said, like, this is just a straight up playback to his earlier, you know, Animal trilogy directorial debut with Crystal Plumage and Cat o' Nine Tails, but just a lot more. You can tell that he's learned so much more from those first three films, like through all his work in the 70s and Inferno, and then getting to this movie. You can tell he learned and got a lot more experience in filmmaking to just make one of the greatest Giallos ever made. Like I said, in my opinion, I love this movie so much, and I condensed this as much as I could, because if not, I would be going on a long while about this film. But yeah, everything with the detective in this movie, I absolutely love his character. Like, every character in this movie, like, I can't think of a character I dislike in this movie, from Anne, like Daria Nicolodi, which I feel she's underutilized again in this movie, just like in Inferno. And Inferno, she's only in it for like 20-25 minutes. In this, she's in it a lot more, but I feel like she's still not utilized enough, as in like Deep Red, or in Suspiria, not Suspiria, but like Opera. Like, I feel, and Inferno, like, even though she's only in it for a little bit, I feel like she has more to do with that plot than in this movie. Like, she's just Peter Neal's assistant in this, and like they have like that little romantic tryst like a little later in the movie, but besides that, she doesn't really have too much of a role in this movie, which is unfortunate, because I love seeing Daria in every single one of Argento's movies. And then we get the whole flashback scenes that we see a few times throughout this movie with the girl with the red shoes. And we see the first flashback of her. It looks like she's about to have like a gangbang with all these guys on the beach. Then one of them comes up and like, and she's got great tits. I like, have to mention that. Like, she had great tits in this movie. And the guy comes up to her, one of the other guys, and like slaps her, and all the other guys end up like pinning him down, and she comes up and kicks him and spits blood in his face. And it's a really cool flashback, and it really adds to the whole red herring with Jane, the ex-fiance, because we see her wearing the same red shoes. And just the music in the flashback scenes too, like how it contrasts with the rest of the score being like that more synth heavy stuff. In the flashback scenes, it's a lot more like melancholy, the score and the music in those scenes. Very, very cool stuff. And let's see. And then we have Tilda and her girlfriend, like I said, the lesbian journalist that was talking to Peter Neal earlier about Tenebrae being sexist. So we have her and her girlfriend that have like this mutual understanding that they live together, they're lovers, but like the girlfriend is taking this guy home for the night, which really gets under Tilda's skin, that she calls her a prostitute and everything later on. And they're in their apartment and we get the double kill with them. And there's something I always wonder when I watch this movie and I see this scene, that she has music blasting, and Tilda says to the girlfriend, "Can you turn that music down?" But the music playing is the score. Like, it's the main theme of the movie. It's Goblin score. So, like, is she playing the score, like, on her radio or whatever, and she's blasting the music? Because that's the only music we hear. And we hear Tilda specifically say, "Can you turn that down?" But it's the score. So I don't know what that's all about. Like, that's just weird to me. Like, she's blasting the score of the movie, or just the score is being played and we're just assuming that she's playing some other music or something. I don't know. It's a very weird line of her saying to turn the music down when all we hear is Goblin score playing. But really cool scene in the way that it's shot when Tilda's putting her shirt on, and then the killer with the razor blade slits like a hole in her shirt while she's putting it on, and then we just see her get cut and the blood squirt out. Really, really cool. And then the girlfriend getting her throat slashed, and then her head falling back through the glass on the stairway leading up to the upstairs. Really, really cool kill. Like, there's some great kills in this movie, and like I said, a lot of white throughout this whole movie. Like the settings, the walls, like even the shirt that Tilda's putting on when she gets killed, like white shirt. Like the use of white, and not like all the different reds and greens and blues that we saw in Inferno and Suspiria, is such an interesting choice for me, for how he went from such stylistic lighting and color in those movies to a much more grounded look for Tenebrae. Like, very, very interesting. And then we get the whole scene with, oh, what the hell is her name? Is it Anne? Anne is Dario Argento's character. I forget her name. She's the daughter of the landlord. And we get that whole scene with her being chased by the dog and attacked by the dog, which it's a tense scene, man. And whenever I see dog scenes like that, like, I always have to bring up this side story that's some scary shit. Like, getting attacked by a vicious dog like that, like especially like a Rottweiler or a pit bull. Like, years and years ago, I was with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and we were going to a friend's house. And he told me, bring some beer, so I picked up some Heineken. We drove over there, and I forgot that he had a Rottweiler, and he left the dog out like all day, and it was a real hot day, and this dog was like dehydrated or something. And when I went around the back to go to his dog jumped on me and like bit me right on my thigh, and ended up like dragging me to the ground. Like, and I thought I was gonna die. Like, seriously, like I was brought to the ground, and like all I could think of, honestly, in that few moments was Suspiria. Like, I really thought to myself in those real split seconds, I was saying to myself, I'm gonna get my throat ripped out like the guy in Suspiria. And I actually, like, just like she does in this scene with the dog, she ends up hitting the dog with something. I had to take one of the Heineken bottles and smack the dog in the head with it. I felt terrible, but this thing could have ripped my throat out. And like, I really thought I was gonna die. I really thought that this fucking Rottweiler was gonna rip my throat out. And all I can think of was Suspiria. Like, I'll never forget that. Like, what a scary situation, though, to be in. So when I see this scene, I know exactly how this girl feels. And just that whole scene is so tense, of her running from the dog after getting bitten, then finding the killer's pictures and everything, like the killer's lair, and then just the chase of the killer chasing after her, and then her getting axed to death. Awesome scene. Like, full of tension, really good atmosphere, really good chase sequence, and really good kill. Like, and it sucks that she's such a young girl and she's a likable character, and just like every other character in this movie. And just seeing her get brutally axed like that, awesome scene though. And then we have Birdie, the interviewer, who is one of the guys that Neil was going on his show to be interviewed about his book. and how Bertie is obsessed with Peter Neal's work and all his books from the past. And we have Gianni, who's the young kid who was hired to help Peter Neal and get him anything he needs while he's there in Rome. Really cool character, like a really cool little kid. Not a little kid, when he's in his maybe teenager or something like that. And I love how they show, like, when him and Peter Neal go to spy on Bertie, thinking that he's possibly the killer. And they see Bertie just get axed in the head. And it is such a great kill. Like, what a great axe kill. Like, just how the axe just so fast, and it just gets stuck right in the side of his head, and he just falls to the ground. Such a great kill. I absolutely love that scene. And then just showing how it affects Gianni, and like him driving his car a little later on, and just showing like quick little shots, like flashbacks of the axing, and showing how it really affected him. Like, it affected this kid that much from seeing this brutal murder in front of his eyes. Like, really well done of how they show how just seeing that affected this kid. Well, very, very cool stuff. And then the whole red herring, like I said, with Jane, with the ex-fiance of Neil, and that the reveal that her and Saxon's character are having an affair. And just her with the red shoes, like I said, like how that plays into the flashbacks. Like, there's a lot of great red herrings in this that really don't point towards Neil being the killer at all. And it's very, very well handled. Then we have Saxon's kill when he's in like the public place waiting for Jane to get there. They were supposed to meet. And another thing of just how they show, like with his death and with Gianni's death a little later, of the quick expression on their face when they're being killed, that you can see that they recognize the killer. Very well done. Like when you see Saxon's character get stabbed, he has a look on his face right before he gets stabbed, like a smile almost, like he's about to say, like, hey, how's it? Like he knows who it is. And then he gets stabbed. Then just the gag of his hat falling off when he falls to the ground, fucking awesome. Like I said, the whole gag of his hat throughout this whole movie, and how it doesn't drop off his head, and then during his kill scene after he gets stabbed and falls to the ground, his hat finally falls off. That's fucking hilarious. That is so awesome how he threw that in there. Such a cool scene. And then we have Gianni remembering something from the murder of Bertie being axed in the head, which really reminds me of, what was his name? Sam from Bird with the Crystal Plumage, of him trying to remember the one little detail that he couldn't remember throughout seeing the attempted murder. And then him finally remembering later on that it was, you know, the wife trying to kill the husband, not the other way around. And it reminds me so much of that movie, with Gianni remembering that Bertie was the one who said that I killed them all. And that he was actually the killer. But then we find out after he gets axed in the head that there is another killer out there. And just the whole way that that's handled is so well done. And then we see Gianni get strangled to death from behind when he gets in his car. He gets strangled from the killer in the back seat. And it's a brutal kill, man. Like, even just for like a strangulation, just seeing like what a nice young guy this is, and how much he's like enamored with Peter Neal, and like how when Neal's about to leave Rome for a few days, and Gianni says to him like, it was really nice to meet you, and I hope like you give me a call when you're back in Rome. Like, really, really cool stuff. And it's really heartbreaking seeing this kid get murdered brutally like this. But then again, like I said with Saxon's character, like right before he gets killed, like while he's getting choked, Gianni, in the car, right before he dies, he turns around and you can see a look of surprise on his face. Like, you can see that he recognizes the killer. And I feel like I said, that's so well done with like the few characters that tips off that it's someone that they know. And we know that Gianni doesn't know Jane. So that kind of gives that red herring a boot, like right then and there, that, all right, it can't be Jane because Gianni doesn't know her. And it's so well done. Like, all the tropes that we see in Giallo films, like before this, after this, it plays off of all of those so well in this movie, and it diverts your expectations very, very well. And then we have my favorite kill in an Argento film, like by far, like so fucking awesome this kill is. When we see Jane, when she calls Daria Nicolodi's character, and she's saying that she wants, can you come over? I want to get these things off my chest. And you think she's talking about, she's the murderer, but she's really talking about wanting to get her affair with John Saxon's character off her chest, and that she doesn't want to kill herself. And Anne says that she'll be right over. And then we see Jane sitting at the table with the gun in her hand. And then we just see the axe crash through the window and chop her arm off, and you see her arm just chopped off with the gun still in it, and she stands up and the blood that just starts squirting all over the white wall. Fucking amazing. Such a great kill, such a beautiful kill. Like I said, like in a few of these videos, like Argento just has a way of making something looks so beautiful and so haunting and disturbing at the same time. Like he has such a knack for making death and violence and killing look beautiful at the same time as being as disturbing as it is. But just the whole way that that's shot, and like I keep saying, like with the use of white being so prevalent in this movie, like with the white walls, with the blood squirting against it, just it looks so fucking good. Like it's such an amazing kill, and like I said, my favorite kill in an Argento film, like by far. Such an awesome sequence, and the whole ending to this movie is my favorite ending to an Argento film. Just the whole reveal of Neil being the killer, and just all the killing that happens in this end sequence is just amazing. After she falls to the ground, after the blood squirts on the wall, and then she just continues to get hacked with the axe. Awesome gore, awesome stuff. And then we find out that after the female detective shows up and she gets axed to death, we find out that Peter Neal is the killer, the second killer. And what a reveal. Like I said, the first time I saw this, I did not see that coming at all. Even though, like I said, with like the flashbacks with the girl with the red shoes, and how it kind of hints that it's somebody's troubled past, and then you can kind of relate that into like the stuff that Neil writes about in his books about murder and everything. So all the clues are there, but just all the red herrings that they throw in, and just the way that it's written is just so well done and so well handled that it's really shocking when you find out that this guy snapped and that this guy is the murderer. And you find out that, like, and then the detective shows up and starts, and I love the line that throws back earlier when they're talking about books, Neil and the detective, and they're saying that the impossible, once you eliminate the impossible, however improbable, must be the truth. And the way that the detective recites that line back to him when Neil's cowering in the corner, what he did, awesome stuff. Like, just the use of that line again, I don't know, something about it, just I love that line, and the way that the detective uses it again at the end to deduce and show how he figured out that Neil is the killer here. And he says that I didn't kill the other women, and he didn't, because the detective said that would have been impossible. So we had Birdie, who was the killer, the razor blade killer, and then once we start seeing the axe killings, we know that that's Peter Neal. And we find out that he killed Saxon and Jane for their affair. That Saxon, his publicist, was having an affair with his ex-fiancée, and that drove him over the edge. And then we even find out more about his background, with that he, as a teenager, and I think it was Rhode Island or something like that, that he was involved in a murder, and that there wasn't enough evidence, and that there was never a trial or anything like that. But that explains all the flashbacks with the girl with the red shoes and everything, that this is the girl that Peter Neal killed when he was a young guy back in the States. And then we see him take the red shoes off of this girl. So I'm assuming, every time I see this is what I take from it, that he took those shoes and he gave them to Jane when they got engaged or when they were dating or something, because she's wearing the exact same red shoes. Like when she walks up after John Saxon's character gets stabbed and killed, and then you see the red shoes walk up, and then sees that John Saxon character has been killed, and then she just turns around and walks away. And you know that was Jane going to meet him. So he had to have taken those shoes and saved them for a while, and then must have given them to Jane when they got engaged. Just awesome how it all ties together at the end of this movie. And then just the whole thing with him faking his death, with him taking the straight razor and just cutting his throat and the blood coming out, and like the detective, no, like, and then just finding out when he goes out with Anne to call it into the radio to get like reinforcements over there, and then he walks back in and he finds that the body's missing, that Neil is gone. And then he touches the razor and he's touching the blood. And then he picks the razor up and he cuts it against himself and sees that it's not sharp at all. And then he sees the button that squirts the fake blood out. Awesome fake out. Like, such a cool little idea there. And then we get that awesome shot. I love this shot so much. I mean, we've seen it in so many movies, but just the way that it's done here, like when the detective is standing there and he bends down and Neil is right behind him, then he stands back up and covers Neil's body again, like his shot again. What a cool shot that is, of him bending down, seeing Neil behind him and standing back up. Such a great shot. Something about it, I just really love that. And then Peter ends up axing the detective in the back and killing him. Then we have Anne coming back after hearing the commotion, and she opens the door, and that whole little art sculpture ends up impaling Peter in the chest and killing him. And then just the ending to this movie is just something about it, man. It's just terrifying. Like, it's really unnerving. Just the fact of thinking also that Peter was standing there with axe in hand, and that he's so far gone at this point that he was going to kill Anne. Like, he was going to fucking axe her to death too. And her just coming in, and then him getting impaled with this art sculpture, and then her just screaming, like screaming her lungs out with the rain pouring down and everything. And that's how the film ends, with just her screams, like her blood-curdling screams of just being in disbelief that this person that she's been like the secretary for, helper for, an assistant for all these years is this deranged killer. And just her, the whole shots of her at the end screaming in the rain as it fades out. Awesome. Such a great ending to this movie. Such a great film in general. And like I said, one of my favorite Giallos of all time. And along with Opera and Suspiria probably, and Deep Red. I don't know, he has so many amazing fucking films, but Opera and Tenebrae for some reason are at the top of my list, for sure. And can't wait to get to Opera and Phenomena after this, because I adore those two movies also. And I'm going to hope to have those two up later today. That way tomorrow I can get into Two Evil Eyes, which I've said in the past isn't all Argento. It's half Argento, but it's half Romero, and who the fuck doesn't love Romero? So that'll be a fun one to rewatch. Trauma will be good after that, to watch that one. We get Savini in there doing effects. We have Piper Laurie in Trauma. Trauma's another film that really doesn't get a lot of love from Argento fans. And I never understood that. I think it's such a great movie. Just the device that they made up for that film, like the kill device, the strangulation machine, awesome, awesome stuff. So I can't wait to cover those movies. And then that's unfortunately after that, and besides maybe like Stenhall Syndrome and maybe The Card Player, and then Mother of Tears, is when his career started really tanking after that, which is so unfortunate. And I mentioned in a few videos ago of how that happens with so many different directors. I mean, look at Carpenter and Craven near the end of his career, and just, I don't know what it is. Like I've said, and I've speculated in past videos, that is it just, lack of creative artisticness or ideas? They just run out of ideas? Or is it just that they get so famous and they get all the money and the fame, and that after that it just becomes like a chore to them, that like producers and studios want them to direct a movie, but their heart isn't in it anymore, and it just shows in their work? I don't know. It's very interesting how that happens with a huge majority of directors, especially in the horror genre. Like, I can't think of many directors that from especially ones that careers span for decades, like Argento's and Carpenter, that that have just a perfect career, like from inception, from the very beginning, from their first film, decades long into like the 2000s and stuff. I can't think of many directors that have just a fucking 100% amazing streak of movies, decades long. Like, I'd really have to like rack my brain on that. But that is Tenebrae. What an amazing film. Absolutely love it to death. And I will have Phenomena and Opera up later today, and then moving on to the other ones that I mentioned tomorrow. And I mentioned at the end of Inferno last that I'm definitely going to be doing the Friday the 13th series this week. As, like I said, that is one of the series that got me into horror in the first place. Friday the 13th and the first Halloween, and the sequels after that that I saw as I got older. But 5, 6 years old is when I first saw Halloween, and then the Friday the 13th series. And the fact that I haven't covered either of those is a crime after this. I mean, it's been like 3 months with this channel. It's absolutely time to at least discuss the Friday the 13th series. I mean, I've been waiting on Halloween for October. I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait that long, because actually I just watched Halloween and rewatched it for like the 100th and something time, like a few mornings ago. And every time I watch it, it's another perfect film. And I've said when I was talking about Suspiria, I think that is a perfect film. And when I talked about The Thing is my favorite horror movie, and not even horror, just my favorite movie of all time. Perfect. And you won't hear me say the word perfect describing a movie many times on this channel. But Suspiria, The Thing, and Halloween are 3 of them. And just having John Carpenter have 2 of those films in that list of perfect films with Halloween and The Thing is absolutely unreal. So I don't think I'm going to be able to wait till October to start covering the Halloween franchise. Maybe I'll just do the first original Halloween, and then during October I'll cover the rest of the series. But look forward to Friday the 13th this week coming, and more Argento coming up later today and tomorrow as we continue with Argento August. All right, guys, take care, and I will talk to you later.